Okay. Today I'm going to show you how to book loads for your box truck. Um, Usually I have three screens in my office, but since I'm recording this, I'm going to put everything on one screen. So the first thing you want to do is open Google Maps, and you're going to use this to map out your route. Okay. This is a very helpful tool. I wouldn't use this to drive. Whatever you do, never use Google Maps to drive because you're going to end up with your roof getting torn off. Okay, use a Garmin, a Diesel, maybe a Rad McNally or a Trucker app. Never use Google for on the truck because you're gonna end up losing your roof. It's made for a car. It doesn't account height and low bridges. So I only use this for mapping out uh, my my routes for my drivers. Okay, and what what's so good about Google is it shows you the mountains. Okay, if you look over here on the east, I mean on the west coast, nothing but mountains everywhere. So when you see mountains, you have to factor that in with your rates because for one, mountains slow you down. You'll be lucky to average 45 miles going through these mountains because it's real tough, and then it's hard on the gas tank. If you've driven through mountains before, the gas is expensive. That's why gas is expensive out west because it's hard to truck that stuff in. I remember one time I was in California and I think I was burning, I think it was like 50, it was $100 for 2 hours worth of gas. So $50 an hour I was burning in gas. So if you're driving 600 miles up, in a mountain, that's easily $300 just to drive 300 miles. You know what I'm saying? And if you would have been in the middle of the United States, you could have probably drove twice as far. So factor in the mountains. And if you look over here on the East Coast, you have the Appalachian Mountains. If you can avoid these, do it at all costs. It runs from like almost to Atlanta, all the way to the East Coast, up to Maine. So those are just as bad as the California mountains and the Wyoming mountains. They're not as tall, but they're still bad. Bad on the gas, and just it slows you down. Okay. So right here I have an example of a load I booked on Friday. I had a driver dropping off in Connecticut, New Haven, Connecticut. Okay. And he ran into the traffic in New Jersey and Washington and New York, and he didn't drop it off to the afternoon. I think it was like 2, maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Everything was already gone off the boards, and there really wasn't much that I could find. So what I decided to do was take two partial loads. Okay, the first partial load was from New Haven, Connecticut to Warner Robins, Georgia. And if you've been to Warner Robins, there's an Air Force base there. So if you ever go there, make sure you have your things in order. If not, they won't let you in. But that trip was 1,000 miles, and it was only paying. Let me get the calculator. It was only paying $1,765 for 1,000 miles. Okay, it's not the best. I mean, it's not the worst. I seen people go for 135, even $1 a mile in a box truck just to get out of a bad state. Okay, but like I said, I was in a crunch. It was afternoon, and there wasn't much on the board, so I had to try to get two partials. And like I said, it's not the worst. 176 a mile is not the worst. You know what I'm saying? But it's not the best either. So I ended up booking that one, and then to add to it, I found a partial that was picking up in Connecticut, not too far away, where my trucker was already at, and it was dropping off in Maryland, not in Maryland, in Virginia. Okay, it was on the way to Georgia, where I was going, and it was $400. Normally I would never take a $400 load, but I needed something to go with the 17, $100. So it was going to Georgia. I mean, it was on the way to Georgia. It wasn't, $400. I could have threw that in the gas tank and it would have covered the gas for the whole trip. But like I said, it's a $400 trip, so you know, I didn't really. I didn't really want to take it. So what I did, I kept looking for more. I kept looking for more, and I found a load going to Pace, Florida. Okay. Pace, Florida is on the border, pretty much on the border of Florida, but, you know, it's all the way on the west side of Florida. It's right under Alabama. So it's quite a ways, but from Georgia, Warner Robins, Georgia, it was only 367 miles or 330 miles. And it's going the exact same road that my driver is taking. Okay. So he's going, remember, I have the one booked for 1700 to Warner Robins, Georgia. And it's going the exact path. There's no side streets, no, you know, going around or nothing. Okay. The one in Georgia dropped off on Monday. And the one in Pace, Florida was a 24-hour drop off. It was 2,000 pounds. Ended up being a big toolbox. Somebody wanted to move their toolbox from Connecticut to Florida. It was 24 hours. I could have dropped off any day over the weekend, which is rare. If you can find something, to drop off on the weekend, it's always good. So it was 330 miles extra. Okay. I was already getting 1765 for the drop off in Warner Robins on Monday. So, and the pay was $1,500 for this one going to Pace. Okay, it was going on the same route. So 330 miles, you divide $1,500 by 330 miles. That's about $4.50 a mile. Okay, so now remember, it's dropping off there, but I had to go back to Warner Robins, which was another 330 miles. So it was 660 miles extra for that 1,500, which is still good. 1,500 divided by 660, which is, the miles to get to Florida and then to come back after we drop it off to the original spot. And it was $2.27 a mile. Okay. So we'll add 1,765 plus $1,500. That's 3,265 for the whole trip. It ended up being 1,317 miles. Okay. Plus, well, hold on, 1,317 plus another 360. So we'll go. All right, let me write this down because I don't want to forget, man. I forget everything. 3,265. We clear everything. So it was 1,000, round off 1,000 miles plus 660 to do the second load, the other partial. So it was 1,660 miles. Okay. 1,660. So we'll put the pay, divide that by 1,660 total miles. And that was close to $2 a mile. Close to $2 a mile. I mean, not exactly two, but it's better. And like I said, the first load didn't drop off till Monday. So, we were able to drop this off on the weekend. So that was an extra $1,500 we didn't count on. Okay. And it went up, the average went up to almost $2 a mile. So if you can partial it out. This was only 5 feet. It was an easy pickup. We dropped it off on a Saturday, made $1,500 and then drove right back to Warner Robins. My driver got to, spend Sunday in Atlanta, and he was at the base by like 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay. So we made $3,200, 3,265 for 1,600 miles, almost $2 a mile. There were two partials. So that worked out great. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to the load board. I'm going to go new load search. And we're going to put only what I do. This is what I do. First thing I'm going to do is straight box truck. Then we're going to go to van. Put van air ride. reefer or vented, you know, van with liftgate, van with logistics, and I think that's it. Uh, oh, moving van. Where is it at? And moving van. You can pause these and see which ones I use. Okay, so I'm in Ohio. Okay, so we're gonna go with Ohio. We're gonna use Ohio as an example. Um, the most deadhead I go, well, we'll say Cleveland, Ohio is the origin. Destination anywhere. Deadhead 50, 150 miles. We usually don't go that far, but I like to keep my options all open. We put both partial and full. I put 26 feet, 999 pounds, and I search back 24 hours. Okay. And I think that's it. And I hit search. Okay. I have the DAT power. Um, Most people, they get the trucker's edge, and it's all the same stuff. But the thing with that power, I think it's like $170 a month, and this auto refreshes when something new comes up. And there's other tools you can use, and I wish people would use it, because when I look on the in the forums or in the Facebook groups, you always see people getting stuck in like Texas, Colorado, New Mexico, just some crazy places in Florida. They get stuck without going back in. Okay. Now, these places, to go into a place where you're not going to get, where there's not a lot of good loads, you got to get a lot of money for it. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to Colorado, let's say Colorado, the Rockies, it's mountainous, it's cold, it's snowing, it's dangerous because you're riding the mountains, and you're not going to get many loads coming out of there. Okay. So you have to take at least $5,000 or something, real high, so you can deadhead to another state. I see a lot of people, they go to these bad states, they take, I don't know what they take, they probably take something average, pay, maybe $2. Let's say they took $2. It's still not enough to go to these bad states. So with the DAT power, it gives you something called marking conditions. Okay, this is a map of all the hot loads, the dry loads, the cold loads. Okay, blue being cool, red being hot. You know what I'm saying? So what we do here, if you go apply the filter, you go to the states, it's going to show you all the hot markets. Okay, all the hot markets other in the red, this shows you from the day before. You know what I'm saying? It goes from the day before, and it tells you what is hot. California, we know it's hot because they have all that stuff. um, Oregon, Washington, you can get loads out of there because most people don't like going there in the first place. Okay, now we're in Ohio. Okay, and if you change this here, go to extended market area, it'll go even deeper and show you what areas in that state are hot and which are not. So if you have a red state, doesn't mean you should go there, and that doesn't mean the whole red state is hot. Okay, I'm in Cleveland, as you can see. There's stuff coming out of there, but it's not red hot. Okay, so the states that show red, it can be deceiving. So you got to break it down to the markets. The shades that show reds, they break it down into little zones, and that's what you should be looking at. So let's say you get a load. Let's say it's paying $3,000 to pay. To get, you drive 1,000 miles to Florida. Florida's always a bad state to pick up stuff unless you're picking up oranges, in the spring or harvest season. The $3,000 doesn't work out because you're not going to find anything good coming out of there. And if you look in Florida, you're going to be deadheading for a long way because you're not going to find nothing in Louisiana, in Alabama, South Carolina. There's a lot of, bad areas coming out of Florida. So that 3,000 doesn't exactly, can easily turn out to $1.50 a mile or less, because you're going to have to deadhead, or you're going to have to take a bad load. I mean, a real bad load just to get out of there. So with the DAT power, you have access to this map. And as you can see, there's not really many areas that are red hot. I mean, if you put in the state, it'll show you a state there's plenty of loads coming from, but those are usually coming from a small area. So this is a good tool to have, man. I see people all the time. Oh, I'm stuck in Florida. I'm stuck in Texas or just some crazy state. And, they have no way to get out. Sometimes they're there 2 or 3 days. And it's because they took a load, $2 mile load, thinking that was good. And it is in most cases, but not to these bad states. I mean, as you can see, it's dry everywhere. So I'm going to go back to the thing. I'm going to go to Ohio. Let me see what they have here. What I do is I sort it by rate. And as you can see, there's 3,600 here. This is from Pennsylvania to Washington. This is a 26 footer. It's definitely not something you want to take. Washington has a lot of mountains. If I was to call these people, I would ask for double that, because let me see, the mileage is right here, 2,500 for 3,600. Let me get the thing out. $3,600 divided by 25.28. That's only $1.42 a mile. Okay. So let me give you an example. Since we were talking about bad states, Washington is a bad state because there's mountains on there. There's 2-lane highways on the mountains without any railings, and the weather's always bad in the mountains. It's always snowing, there's ice, there's clouds. So, something like this, you would want at least $3 a mile going to Washington. Okay, my drivers won't even go to Washington no matter what it pays. They say, hey, don't send me to Washington. And I don't send them. But, something like this, I would definitely ask for $3 a mile. But since my drivers don't go there, I would never send them to Washington. So the next, let's see what we have here. This is 3,000 miles from Canton, Ohio to Temple, Texas. Now, that's not a bad rate. So let me see. 3,000 miles divided by, well, how many miles is it? 1,300 miles, 1,305. Okay, that's $2.29 a mile. That's not too bad. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people take this with no problem. They say, oh, I'm getting more than $2. I'm going to take it. But here's the deal. There's not a lot of good loads coming out of Texas, and Texas is huge. You can use a whole 11-hour shift driving through Texas and still be in Texas. Okay? So let me see on the map. I don't know, what is it? Temple, Texas. If you go to Texas, let me see. I remember these are usually for semi loads. Most of these are all semi loads. So just because it's red doesn't mean you're going to find a box truck. So box truck loads from Texas, in my experience, is bad. Let me see if I can find, what was it? Temple, Texas. Temple, Texas. All right, so Temple, Texas is past. It's in between Waco and Austin. So a little bit past Waco. So we'll go back to the map, see if I can find Austin or Waco. First, let me find the state. Let me look. This is a little bit confusing. There's Fort Worth. Where is that again? Waco, Fort Worth. So it's under Fort Worth, quite a ways. So we got Fort Worth. It's Jonesboro. Just added here. Apply filter. Okay, so here we go. That was stupid of me. I could just typed it in here. This is Temple, Texas, where that load takes. It pays $2.29. Now, if we break it down to the extended market area, and remember, these are for semis. You know what I'm saying? These are for semis. And if you scroll in, it's not red hot. This is red hot. This is sort of hot. This is, decent. This is okay. This is like one step from, like a tan color, like almost from yellow. So chances are you're not gonna find any good loads coming, at least for a box truck. I mean, you'll find semi loads in Texas, but if you're driving a box truck, you know, you're not gonna find a load. So the people, if they take this load, there's a good chance they're not gonna find anything good, and uh, they're gonna deadhead out of Texas or wait for days. I mean, you could wait for days, but most of the time you're gonna deadhead. And if you look around Texas, there's nothing good around Texas. So I avoid Texas at all costs, unless I'm getting $3 or $4, at least $3 to $4 going into Texas. I don't even go to Texas. I don't even go to Texas. That's why it's paying $2.29, but that's not enough. And this is told to TQL. They're notorious for paying cheap. So you'd have to call them and try to negotiate. A lot of times they don't negotiate because they know there's people out there that would take this stuff. They're thirsty. I mean, people are taking garbage. So I would not take it. At $2.29, it's good, but it's going to a state where it's going to be hard to get something coming out, and you're going to have to deadhead somewhere. So if you can't find a good load within Texas and deadhead within Texas, look what you have around you. Nothing but yellow and just garbage. You're not going to find anything good out of there. So that $2.29 could end up being $1.50 a mile, even if you take a bad load just to get out of Texas. So, you know, excuse me. So what you do is you stay away from bad states like Texas. You try to stay away from the West Coast. California always has loads. If you can find a good load paying to go to California, you're definitely going to find a load coming out of California to wherever you need to go. But Texas, Florida, Washington, Colorado, stay away from those states unless they pay you $3, $4, $5 a mile. Okay. So we're going to move on. The next one is 3,000 for 1,200 miles. This is Youngstown going to Texas. Now, this is a little bit more than this, so it might be like 240, 230 a mile. It's still going to Dallas, Texas. It's still, like I said, it's still going to be hard to get out of there. You got one going to Arizona, which is 20 feet. That leaves you 6 feet. So that's 2,800. And it's a little bit over $1 a mile. So we're not going to go with that. So Akron to Florida, that's 1,000 miles for 1,600. That's a no-go because you're not going to find anywhere any loads coming out of Florida. You're going to have to drive a long ways to get it. So it's good to stay out of these states. These states are horrible. Sorry. All right, let's look. California, Palm Bay, Florida, Columbus, Georgia. Let's see what's in Georgia. This is 659 miles to Georgia. This is Hurricane. I mean, I've never used them. I've heard bad stuff about them, but we're using this as an example. 659 for $1,200. $1,200. Divide that by 659. Okay, so that's $1.80 a mile. If you call them, you can definitely get more money. Always negotiate up. Don't ever take the rates that's on the board. I see a lot of dispatchers and people. They'll say, "Hey, I'm calling about that load. I'm ready to take it." No, when you call, tell them, say, "Hey, look, I have a driver in the area. He's ready to go. He's empty, and we're close to, I'm looking to get the market rate." Tell them you're looking to get the market rate and negotiate your way up. Don't ever take a load that says, what's written on the board. You know what I'm saying? If they say no, move on, But let's say this, you could take that to Georgia and you can get $2 a mile for that. And it's not too far. I like this one. This is 4 feet. I like the partials. I really do. So this is Akron going to Virginia. It's only 30, close to 4,000 pounds. It's 4 feet. It's $1,000. Okay. 1,000 miles divided by 398. Let's say, 398. That's about $2.50 a mile. But remember, this is only 4 feet. So we're going to go to the map. This is from Akron, Ohio to Gordonsville, Georgia. Akron is about 40 minutes from Cleveland, where I live. Akron, Ohio, going to, what does it say? Gordonsville, Virginia. Gordonsville, Virginia. Okay. Now that alone, 250 a mile, it's okay. What I aim for is I always aim for $1,000 a day. My drivers, they stay out 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. That means they drive 7 days a week. Okay. There's no, drive Monday through Friday. The only time they don't drive is when they take the mandatory breaks. And when I hit that 34-hour, mandatory, I usually try to do it on the weekend when nothing's due. So I try to keep them driving, try to average $1,000 a day. You can take that alone. Remember, you're gonna have to drive through Pennsylvania, which is a lot of mountains. It's horrible driving, and you're gonna have to go through the Appalachian Mountains to get there. So it's an awful drive, but it's $1,000. It's only 4 feet, and it's only 4,000 pounds. So we'll see what we can add to that. Um, so we'll edit this out. We'll want to go towards Virginia. Let's see what's in Virginia. Richmond, Virginia. See if we can find any other loads to add to this, going all the way to Richmond, Virginia. Okay, this is 4 feet, almost 4,000 pounds. Uh, Here's another 4 footer, another $1,000. That's probably the same load. Here's a 20 footer, 850, 4,000 pounds. Going to Maryland, which is in that area. It's only 479 miles. You can drive all this in a day. Okay, so that's 850 more. I would work it more. You know what I'm saying? This is almost 500 miles. You could probably get 1,100, 1,200 for this because you're going through the Appalachian Mountains, which is gonna burn more gas. But we'll save that for now. Let me see what else we can do. A 20 footer. I think this is the same thing. There's an 8 footer for 800 miles. This is going to PA, which might take you out of your way, but we don't want to do that. So 12 footer, 500 miles from Buffalo. So we're going to go with this one for now as an example. This is Findlay, Ohio, and it's going to Elk Ridge, Maryland. So we're going to add that to our route. Elk Ridge, Maryland. Okay, we'll see where that's at. Okay, so there's 2 drop-offs. All right, so we can do these in a day. That's going to be 500 miles total. You can do it in a day. You get there, drop off. Okay, from here to here, it's probably going to be like 100 miles. I'm not sure. I wasn't looking. So here's what you do. You can map this out. You can go straight to Elk Ridge first and then come down to Maryland. Okay, to Virginia. What I would probably do is go from Virginia and then drop off in Maryland, so that way I can pick up. There'll be more loads available in the East Coast than there will be in Virginia. Okay, so you want to take that into consideration. All right, you're gonna drive through the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, so that you should factor that in. But if you go first to Maryland and then drop off to Virginia second, you can do either or, but you want to drop off in Virginia first and go to Maryland because you have New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut, all these places where you can pick up loads. More than you can in Virginia, North Carolina, all of these. There's not much loads coming out of here. So what I would do is drop off to Virginia first and then drop off to Elk Ridge, and it's a total of 500 miles. Okay. Now let's go add that up. Let's see, what was it? The first one was 398 miles, or 300 and. Well, let me delete all this. It's $1,000 to go to Virginia, plus 850. Where was it to go drop off in Maryland? Now, this one's 479 miles. You can easily get 1,100, 1,200 miles for this. Okay, don't settle for the 850. They're always going to throw a low number, but just for the sake of this, let's say you only get 850 for this. All right, you add $850, which brings the total to $1,850. Okay. Now make sure you always negotiate. You can easily get $1,100 for this because you're going to the Appalachian Mountains. Okay. Now these two loads are not going to take both. They're not going to take both. They're not going to take both. They're not going to take all the space. But it's $1,800, and you're going 500 miles. Okay, so you divide 1,850 by 500. You're getting $3.70 for a 500-mile trip. There's two loads, two partials, and you're going 500 miles, 509 miles, 8-hour total trip. With the mountains, you can do this in one day. And if anything, you just drive for one day, get close to get a hotel close to the first drop off, which will be in Virginia, and then drop it off in the morning, and then drive an hour later, and what is it, hour and a half, 2 hours, and drop it off in Maryland. That's $500. That's 500 miles. 500 miles for 1850. And these rates, you can negotiate these rates easily because you're going through the Appalachian Mountains. All you have to do is call them. Don't be shy. I know a lot of dispatchers are shy. They call. They're scared they're gonna lose out. They say, oh, I just want to keep the truck moving. Me personally, I don't give a damn what it is. If it doesn't pay, I will not move the truck. I will let the truck sit for a month before I take a stupid rate. Hear this again. I'll let it sit for a damn month before I take some stupid ass rate. So call these people, negotiate. 1850, that's the bare minimum. That's what's on the board. You're still going to make $3.70 per mile, taking two partials, and all in pretty much the same area. And then you're going to find the load back, and you're going to repeat the process. If you can't find a good load that pays you for one load full, partial it out. Get the first one and then figure something out on the way there or on the way back. This is a little bit different than my first one that I gave an example, but it's still good. It's 500 miles total. You can't beat that. $3.70 for two small partials, and then when you drop it off in the morning, you find another load. You're on the East Coast. You have a better chance of finding a load than you would in Virginia or any of these states. So you want to drop off to Virginia first, and then work your way into Maryland. So that way, if you have to go into New Jersey to find a load, you can do that easily. So I'm gonna end this. I mean, I know I talk a lot, and I ramble on a lot, but if you follow these steps, and just partial it. If you can't get what you want, partial it out, grab a couple loads, and make money. There's money to be made. You don't have to take $1.50, $1.60, $1.70. You don't have to do that, man. I see people doing $1.35, or $2 going into Texas or Florida. If you're gonna go into these bad states, you got to take $3, $4, $5 even, because you're not gonna find nothing out on the way back. So always, if you can get the DAP power, it's worth it. It's worth it. This map shows you everywhere where it's dry. This is from the day before. This changes, but the states that are hot usually don't change. They usually don't change. If you're going to Texas for $2 a mile, you're gonna have trouble getting a load on the way out. Look at all this deadhead. You go to Florida, it's even worse. Let's say you get your $2. Let's say you get $2.50 or $3 going into Florida. Where the hell are you gonna find a good load for a box truck? Nowhere. So you got to get $4 or $5 going into these places. And if you can't get that, partial them out. That's what I do. I do partials. My drivers love it because they make more money. They love it. It's little partials. I try to keep the truck as light as possible and I try to maximize the money as much as possible. So I found two little $500 loads coming from Ohio, and they're paying $3.70 just by partialing those out. And that's at the minimum. When I get on the phone, I negotiate and I say, look, man, I have a driver there. They'll pick it up and they'll drop it off. They're ready to go. I'm looking for the market rate. Can you do anything, over, I'll set my own price depending on the miles. I won't go for nothing less than $2 a mile, but I'll go, let's say $2.30 a mile. And then they're going to negotiate. They're going to say, look, we can't give you that, but what we can do is, we can give you $200, $300 more to take the load. And that's $200 or $300 that you can just throw in the gas tank. You know what I'm saying? You fill up the tank, that's a tank and a half. I mean, it's good money, man. Partial it out. If you can't find nothing good, partial it out and make sure you get your $2. In this example, we got our $3.70. It doesn't get any easier than that, man. Like I said, I'm going to cut this short. It's already 35 minutes, so sorry about that. But if you get stuck, rewind or pause the video. And if you have any questions, let me know and I'll make a video for something else.